experience league so that you can kind of get a start. Inside of Fusion as well, there's also blueprints or templates, that can kind of help get you started as well. Ask your admin, if you can have a environment. Now, if you don't have Fusion, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. But I would suggest, if you haven't had an opportunity, there is a Fusion class out in Adobe Learning. And from that, you can actually get a test environment for 30 days while you're going through the class, because you're actually learning how to build stuff. And that's kind of my last point for the formal training courses. So that's basically kind of a good pathway to kind of get started. Now, many folks will say, well, okay, like, what would you do with Fusion? Like, give me some use cases or some ideas. This is probably the most common use case that most folks start with for their Fusion. And that's just taking your requests that come in to your queues, and then having automation convert those requests into some kind of project template so that you can kind of get your template set up. Without Fusion, most folks will go through and do the manual conversion way, basically just kind of switching it into a template and getting everything set up. But you can essentially have Fusion do that for you. So when things maybe get approved as part of your queue, and maybe based on some custom questions in your form, it knows, hey, I should go pick up this template and let me go ahead and convert that for you. So the benefits for a lot of this stuff is just saving time. It also enforces some consistency. You can have Fusion do auto naming for your projects. It can make sure that fields like your groups and portfolios and things like that are filled out when it's doing its conversion, and obviously moving data properly from the request of the project. This is probably the one that we see the most that folks use Fusion for. Let me pause and see if there's any questions. Okay, cool. I'm going to keep going. Use case number 2. I see this a lot. This is one of probably the first things that I got started with when I learned Fusion. We had some systems that we weren't integrated with, but we could get spreadsheet data out of them, and folks wanted that spreadsheet data populated into Workfront. So in this example, think about something like your HR system. Maybe you are trying to update all the users in your system with, I don't know, cost centers or location information, for office buildings, things of that nature. And your boss sends you an HR, sheet and says, hey, is this something you can populate in the Workfront so that we can kind of use it for reporting or things of that nature? So you could use Fusion essentially to read that spreadsheet, get the data off of it, and then push that into maybe custom fields that you have in your Workfront environment. So again, the benefit for stuff like this is kind of consistency, standardization. It helps you align, obviously, records or data between those two types of systems or whatever systems you're kind of syncing with. So this is a pretty common use case as well that folks see. Asset generation. Now, you guys may have seen some of this in some classes in Summit where this was talked about. So the use case here is, potentially if you have folks that maybe have an asset on your team that your creative team has created, and they need to essentially maybe get different sizes of that asset, thinking about social sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, things of that nature. You could potentially use Fusion and, connect out with Adobe Firefly and use Firefly as an example, to maybe generate some derivatives off of that asset for things like your social sites. If you want a little tweak or something like that, if you want to add some different colors because it's going on to different environments, you can do that. And I was actually in one of the labs at Summit where they did this. We actually some of the tools to actually do this. Now, I will make a note on something like this. Firefly Services is something that has to be licensed separately from all this stuff. But again, it really helps save time, and your non-marketers may be able to make some small tweaks on approved assets through a scenario like this, so that they can basically maybe get something put out to a social environment a little bit quicker. Syncing for digital asset management systems. So, you know, whether it's AEM, Binder, any other DAM system like that, this is a pretty common scenario. Your creative teams are obviously part of your projects. They're typically creating assets maybe for your marketing campaigns, things of that nature. And when they finish, right, you have an approved asset, you'd like to be able to kind of put it into your digital asset manager with some kind of metadata so that it can kind of live in perpetuity. And if people need to find that asset later in the year or next year or something like that, it's available in kind of a single source space. So that's typically people will do something like that with their DAMs, and syncing basically those assets from Workfront when they are finished, final, you know, everything's proofed and approved. They push them up into their digital asset manager, folder structure, whatever it may be, and those things are now available for anyone else to use, and they can add metadata from Workfront. So think about, you know, maybe the program it was a part of or campaign that it was a part of, you know, specific industries or things like that that were involved that you want to tag. You can tag all of that stuff in Workfront and push that up with the asset into your DAM. So again, this helps save, you know, some time, but it also is mostly about consistency, so that you kind of have your data tagged in a way, both in your DAM, in your Workfront, that folks can find it again later down the road. This is a much more complex use case. And if you use Marketo as an example, we do in our environments, you can create basically workflow. And I have a link to actually, there's this workflow is actually kind of documented out there in Experience League. If you guys didn't know, this is more of a B2B workflow, which, you know, is kind of a use case for us. We're mostly B2B in our payments area. Or and so in general, this is just if you have Marketo and you have Workfront, where you can actually connect basically a campaign that's flowing through your Workfront environment, all the way through into your Marketo environment, where you can kind of basically get, if you're needing to send out emails via Marketo as part of your campaign actions, you can basically connect to Marketo, an email template. You can essentially go through and do all your proofing through Workfront like you might normally do. And then when things are approved and finalized, basically get things scheduled or ready to schedule outside of Marketo. So again, the benefit for this is, you know, a faster time to market if everything is kind of automated. It doesn't work maybe for every email that you can think of, but if you guys have drip campaigns and things of that nature where your stuff is pretty static, that's kind of what this use case supports for the most part. And I'll give you one other use case. I'm going to come off here that you guys may or may not know about. You could potentially use Fusion to build out basically, this is a dashboard, but it has a Fusion component that's actually building out a live website. So if you're thinking about maybe wanting to have something like what we're doing here for help and benefit for your users, and you want to give them a place where they can go through and actually have some content for you know, making requests or interactive training or things of that nature, you can actually, you need to know some things of that nature, but Fusion actually can push this into a dashboard for you and basically make a customized website for the most part. So just if you guys didn't know, that's a little tidbit. Outside of that, that is most of what I got. Let me finish up here. Oh my gosh, didn't mean to do that. Apologize for that. I'm gonna get back through here. Last, best practices. So in general, if you guys are thinking about Fusion, the easiest way is to start with something small. So the first use case that I showed you, just kind of converting something from a request into a project. Make it simple, make it easy. Maybe it's just learning or grabbing fields from a spreadsheet to put into Workfront. Those are great use cases. And the reason for that is number two, it will take you some time to test and debug. So you'll be learning to use the tool. You're going to get errors. You're going to get weird messages as you're kind of learning Fusion. But in general, if you start small, it becomes a little easier for you to kind of understand, okay, I can see what's happening and what's going on. That helps you to plan for errors, because in general, we're all brand new. We can see great benefits in our minds for automating things, but it doesn't always work out exactly the way we want to. Which brings the fourth part. Anything that you do in Fusion, there are ways to put notes in your little Fusion scenarios. I highly, highly recommend documenting that, so that if something happens to you, or you need to pass it on to someone else to kind of finish it up, they have information on what you were trying to do with your scenario. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Joaquin, and he's going to walk us through a little bit about kind of year-end cleanup and system maintenance.
Thanks, Kurt. Yeah, and as always, man, your Fusion talks are very informative. Even though I've heard them like 3 or 4 times now, there's always something that I learn, and that I also my brain starts to spin on what more I could do with it. So thanks as always for your insight and your understanding of Fusion. So now we're going to get into system maintenance and cleanup. And like I had mentioned before, it's getting to be that time of year again where a lot of our campaigns, maybe we've already started pushing things out for the Christmas season. Maybe we're looking into the next year, fiscal year, and so things are starting to slow down. And obviously with the holidays becomes some free time. And this is that great time to go and take a look at your system and see what's been done, what's hanging out there. Is there anything that's been abandoned, orphaned, any of those kind of things? And can we start cleaning those up? So here's kind of some reasons for why system maintenance and cleanup. This may already be obvious to you. For some people, it may not be. Again, depending on what your life cycle is in your system or what maturity level you are in your system, some of this can be forgotten as you're just trying to like get up to speed, get different business teams in there working, doing the things that they need to do. And obviously we build things and sometimes they get abandoned. A lot of times dashboards, reports, things like that sort of get missed and sort of fall off to the wayside. So system maintenance is a great opportunity to kind of circle back and take a look at those things. So very first thing is just keep it simple. It helps you to hide and remove any of the unwanted stuff out there. If you leverage layout templates, this is also kind of the same principle, just really providing people that go into the system to do what they need to do. We know that we probably have different user types. We have different personas that go into Workfront. And so we don't want to overload them with the things that they don't necessarily need to see, as well as sort of get that antsy bug to touch buttons and do things and create stuff that maybe you hadn't intended them to create. And so this kind of helps alleviate some of that down the road, as well as it provides ease of navigation. So again, if we kind of keep dashboards clean, reports clean, we learn how to pin, we know what things are labeled as, we can help kind of move that stuff into the right UI and sort of allow for our users to kind of navigate through the system fairly easy. And then, of course, as we're just kind of talking about that user experience, is really heighten that experience for them so that they're not getting cluttered down with unwanted information, or in their project list, they're getting a bunch of their like tests or demo projects that they also have forgotten about, as well as if you allow some of them to create reports, the report pages don't look overwhelming with task report 1 and task report 2, those kind of things. So we try to clean those up and get rid of those on a fairly regular basis. Performance and efficiencies. So again, depending on what your maturity level is for your Workfront instance, you might have just a year or 2 of data in there. But if you've been on there for some people that I know, like 10 years back when it was called @task, then you have a lot of information in the system and it can be unruly. And so it just allows for better use of reports. So like improved load times. You don't have all that extra information that you don't need in those reports, despite the fact that you've built a complex filtering system. Some things can still get through there. And then it's just allowing for that opportunity to get rid of those items. And then again, just right there, as I was mentioning, the bad data. So if you are pulling in reports that you didn't necessarily want to, that data doesn't get in the way, as well as double checking custom forms to make sure the data that you do want and the forms that are attached to the objects that you do want have the correct data in there. So not allowing for voluntarily filled out fields or redundant fields that might capture similar but different data in there that can just confuses the higher structure of reporting. And then the very last one is scalability. So The more we can do foundationally to keep our system clean, the easier it will be to expand into more use cases. So if you have had that opportunity where you get to come in first with an implementation where maybe you're just working on your creative team and you set the system up for them specifically, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, another arm of our marketing teams want to get in there. Sometimes it can get confusing when you add those in because now they're starting to use different form fields, different nomenclature, all of that kind of stuff. So if we try to standardize it and clean it up, when we add people in, we have common terminology, we have common understanding of how that data gets collected. And then obviously growing with the company needs. I mean, there's not a greater feeling in the world than starting off with a small use case for Workfront, and then all of a sudden everybody and their mother wants to be into Workfront using it for different things. I've been in environments where our vendor relations team wants to use Workfront. I've been in instances where legal and compliance wants to use it, finance wants to use it. So not just marketing teams want to use it. Even to the point where sometimes I've seen people use it to schedule meeting rooms. So it can be used that way if you know how to do it right. So if you're going to open it and expand it that way, it's good to have some kind of cleanliness, some standardization within the tool to see what's happening. And then obviously the key point to everything that we're doing is we want to focus on the important things. Are we doing things the right way, and are we choosing the right things to work on? And so by kind of cleaning up and sort of decluttering, we can allow ourselves to see those things. And so next slide. So just kind of a short list of some common areas for maintenance to focus on. These are a lot of our objects that you have probably touched a lot of, like users, obviously, roles, teams, projects, templates, all those kind of things. So these will be the ones that will often get a little bit dirty in their use and sort of functionality within the system. Again, just sort of reiterating on the fact that if you have two different use cases that come into your instance, sometimes they might not play well together. And so you might have a little bit of cloudiness between those objects as they fit between those two use cases. So just kind of keeping those clean and to understand why you're choosing to be different in one instance or one scenario versus another, then this just helps you out on that. And so obviously this is not an exhaustive list. It really is dependent on your specific use case. So I do encourage at times to take an audit of your instance to understand what it is that you're doing and how you're trying to support like the greater effort of your company, whether that's just solely marketing teams or slowly a specific functional team within your instance, so that you know, okay, as we build, this is how we're supporting those individuals as they're inside our instance. So a really common one for like users is add and remove correctly. So if you don't have a deactivate process, I would highly encourage one. You can even create like a project template that says, hey, I need to run down these steps once I deactivate somebody, as well as when we bring them on, do we have a custom form that captures additional data in the system? Oftentimes what I've seen is like, what's the region the person is working on? What is their org structure? All of those kind of things within that form. And then also looking for logins. Have we brought people on that are actually using Workfront? Are they using it the right way? All of those kind of things is to kind of double check. Roles is a really big one. The big thing I like to say with the roles is make sure it's really easy to kind of get used to filling out roles as job titles sometimes, but I actually really encourage by the function. It makes it a lot easier to like manage the role and to sort of be able to use them in multiple use cases. So you don't have to worry about creating like digital copywriter versus print copywriter or blog writer. They're all writers. Let's call them copywriters. Obviously, it's really dependent on your instance, but generally that's how I like to approach it. If you do need to get into being a little bit more complicated, it's nice to back some of those decisions up with descriptions to those roles. So you can always add descriptions to the objects you create, and you can highlight basically the reason why you're doing that, so that when you come back across it or somebody else walks into your instance, they can understand the decisions that were being made. There's teams and groups. So again, do they serve their purpose? The kind of both of these have similar tones to them, but the difference really from teams to groups, if you're not fully aware of them, teams generally are assignable, so you can assign them to objects, so like tasks, for example, when they can function on, where groups are often created for awareness, where they can report against the work that's being done within their groups. So try not to confuse those two. That's oftentimes the part where I see people sort of getting a little dirty with their data, is kind of using those interchangeably when they can be best served by kind of remembering what their true intention is. And then groups, obviously, if really nice if you can follow your org structure. I know this sometimes isn't as easy, especially if you are in a company that's very large and has oftentimes restructured, and sometimes more than once a year can happen. Somebody high level leaves and all of a sudden everybody wants to like change seats all of a sudden. So that, if you can kind of keep that organized a little bit, that will be really useful for you when you start doing maintenance, so that you understand where people can go. And just backing up on what Kurt said, if you have Fusion in your system, you can basically download your org structure and help facilitate through the scenario process and automation process, which just makes your life so much easier. Trust me, you do a couple reorgs and you're going to be really asking for some help with Fusion to help do that for you. Projects, obviously, it's the lifeblood of what we do in Workfront. I know we are tending to use more of the term work management, but truly it is a project management tool. This is where we're kind of cataloging and articulating the steps that we take when we go from point A to point B, regardless of what that project looks like. And so for a lot of new users, we know this. When we bring them in, we build their environment out, we do some UA testing, we have them look for bugs and cracks within the environment that we've built. They're going to be doing test projects, demo projects, untitled projects. A lot of them are going to be created out there. And so it's really nice to kind of circle back and find those, see if they are still needed, if someone's still wanting to use them, and then eliminating them if we don't need them. Sometimes your test projects can be training projects. That's great. I encourage that, and they can hold on to that so that they can go back to them. Oftentimes there's a lot of good information put in there in your descriptions, like what they should be doing, why they do a certain task, all of those kind of things. But if they're truly just blank projects, then it's good to kind of get those things out. Then there's also the abandoned projects that got started, didn't get completed for whatever reason, didn't get put on hold, didn't get put on canceled, any of those kind of things. So we want to take a look for those. And then another real common one is the 100% complete. So all the tasks are completed, they're marked off, but for some odd reason, we didn't sign in the system that we want it to be automatically completed as a project. So those will sometimes sit out there and sort of clog things up a little bit. They won't get pulled into complete reports. They won't get pulled into like quarter reports for completion, all those kind of things. So you want to make sure that those have been officially marked as complete as a status. And then do they follow your governance? So some people choose to have projects only be created by templates, and they should be by certain templates. So you can do follow-ups on that. Are they assigned to write programs and portfolios, despite how you have decided to build your program and portfolio structure? Whatever you've agreed upon, does it follow those steps too as well? And so making sure to go back and clean those up. And the key thing there, I'll say, is if you have marketing operations or some sort of PMO group within they can be very useful to you to help manage some of those things, so that you don't feel you have to do it as a system admin all the time. You can give some of that onus to them to sort of manage and maintain for you. And then sort of the last three things here. Just really quickly, just looking at some of the minutia of those items so that you make sure that they're not clogging up anything. The big things are like custom forms and fields. A lot of times we create similar but not quite the same forms and fields. So just make sure that we sort of look back on those and make sure that they're out of the system. So moving to the next slide, thank you. If you don't know, hopefully you do. If you've had a chance to look at the blueprints, it keeps that whole area of Workfront is expanding every time I look at it. But they do have a system administrator maintenance dashboard for you to download, and it's going to have a lot of useful reports in there that you can automatically download. It will start skimming through your system right away without having to do a lot of extra work. But I do encourage that you do look at the filters to make sure that it's targeting similar stuff. You might have made some adjustments to your system that don't quite line up, and you can always tweak these reports to be better serving for you and what you're looking for. So I would suggest as sort of just a test run to download these into your sandboxes. Probably find the most current sandbox and download it there to see just how it functions and see if it's useful for you too as well. And there's also the usage report one too that I'm not highlighting here, but that's also a nice dashboard to have alongside with this maintenance one too as well, because you can see in real time what's actually happening in your system. And then you can also look back reflectively on the maintenance to say, okay, if it's being used like this, then this information I'm seeing in the maintenance dashboard means slightly different to me than what I might have just looked at it blindly, for example. So next slide. I'm going to highlight just a couple reports here. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. I do encourage to sort of figure out what's important to you in your cleanup. The first thing I really like to talk about, just like we do with building environments, is we want to build based upon our current understanding and our experience, and then we test and we run and then we iterate. So you're going to constantly be updating, changing things, looking for additional information. People leverage customized cells, bringing something to the highlight from a color perspective so that they can see it right away. If there's missing information, maybe that cell turns red, those kind of things. So you'll want to kind of finesse it and make it your own as you build it out. But this one, again, is that 100% complete, no complete status. So this allows you to look at the projects by their portfolios, and then within them, it breaks it out by sort of users. Again, if you have a project management team, they will probably see most of the project management people within this list, and then you can always provide that to like the lead project manager to say, hey, can you just follow up with your team to make sure that they start closing things out, and just double check with me if you need anything to support you in terms of getting these done and closed out. And here I'm just sort of giving you some useful, who you would be useful for, and the cadence. Obviously, it's really on your time. I always like to joke that maintenance, system maintenance is like cleaning, or it's like painting a bridge. Once you get done, you kind of have to start over and keep going. So you can do it frequently, like on a monthly basis, quarterly, or if you're really kind of the only person that's doing the system admin for Workfront at your company, then maybe it's the end of the year. But I do encourage at least one time in the year to do it, and whatever makes sense to you. And then a couple of just associated projects that also help out, or reports rather, when looking at projects that can help you out. And that's projects not updated in like a certain amount of time, or number of projects based on templates. And the templates one is really great to just double check and audit your templates to make sure, are they still functional? Did we abandon any templates? Are we noticing any templates are changing over time? Do we need to like adjust our current templates? So those kind of reports do sort of help you in the long run there. Next slide, please. Template audit. So this one is basically what we were just talking about. Number of projects on a template, the portfolio by status, our projects and programs and status. So all those kind of things help us to like bring all of this larger information from our project usage and templates into a better light here. And so we can see here just basically how all of those are functioning. So we can see like in this example, template 4 has a lot of usage, but then like our templates 3 and 5 and 6 don't look like they have a lot. So we could just recircle back at the end of the year. Again, if you have a PMO, our marketing operations can kind of sit down with them and say, hey, let's take a look at these. Maybe we need to readjust these, those kind of things. The next slide, please. User license and access levels. So this is a key one now for a lot of us. The licensing structure has changed. You may or may still be in the old one. I think most of us are now kind of being promoted up to the new structure. And we sort of don't have traditionally the free license anymore. Some people do. They may have negotiated that with their groups or their account managers, but that is still something that is out there. to consider as you're looking at this is, are we providing the right license and access levels to our users? Big key thing here is not all users go into Workfront to do the same thing. Sometimes we have workers, sometimes we have managers, sometimes we have executives. Maybe there's super users, there's group admins, all of those kind of things that are in there. So this is just really a great way to like make sure that we've built the system and we've got the right people in doing the right thing for us. And so this is kind of what this report does. You can also do an active user audit. So this just looks at your complete list. That's really good if you're looking for missing information. So if you have a custom form that's associated to your users, it can highlight some of that missing information so you can get it into them so that you have all that stuff. And then users and associates associated to layout templates, last login by month and license, and then deactivate user checklist and process. So again, I kind of don't encourage deletion of things in Workfront, at least not for a very, very long while. That's anything from custom forms, fields, to users, to projects, to any of that kind of stuff. Because you just never know. Sometimes just when you think it's safe to go back in the water and start deleting stuff, that's when somebody comes along and bites you and says, hey, where did this go? And you're like, okay, let's go back and resurrect that if it's within 30 days. Or unfortunately, we may have to rebuild it if our sandboxes are paced out a certain distance, which I do also encourage, that you allow for some ability within your sandboxes to be able to go back and at least recreate from what you see, and then maybe that can be useful to you. But definitely deactivation process is really good in terms for users, in terms of handing off projects or other objects ownership to the person who's either going to cover for them, or maybe a manager is covering for them as they transition out. And so then you can pass those things along and make sure that there's nothing sort of sitting there with that individual. So next slide here, and I'll see if I can finish up here in the next couple of minutes. This is really, again, just 10 tips to help organize your Workfront. I'm going to say it again, not exhaustive in terms of like the different tips that you could use or how you rank them. It's not based on any order here, but right off the bat, love the idea, always encourage, always promote a governance or some sort of work management group within your instance. They will really help you drive the ship of Workfront and help hopefully be that reinforcer to good behavior and good adoption within the system. And the more you can get those individuals plus your users getting on and following basically what you have built, the easier your cleanup will be. One side thing I like to do is develop naming conventions for your objects. So this can be real simple prefixes, suffixes, however you imagine it would make sense to your users. And also to kind of think about, how do I do this with use cases? So if I have a marketing team, do I do MKTG on the front of everything? If I have a web team, do I do WEB for the things that are assigned to them? It doesn't have to be overly complicated, but just enough to make sure that you understand what's sort of relating to each of those different groups, or just basically how you structure your instance. That way you can look for those things. You may have, 101 different custom forms, and it just makes it a lot easier if you just type in the prefix really fast, then it just pulls up all the items that are relating to the specific group that you're looking at. Add description to objects. Again, this is another thing too. I know it takes time, but just a couple notes or reasons why allows a better understanding of why that object is in there. This is really useful for group admins, because if you build something and your group admins don't know Workfront like you do, it just helps them to understand, okay, why is this object created and what is this object's function? And so they don't have to always tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, can you explain this to me? It just gives them a little bit better perspective. Think about creating personas and users and apply accordingly for the access. So again, this could be part of your governance and work management team, is to understand who goes in. You might just have requesters, you might just have reviewers, you might just have workers. So like your creative teams, graphic designers, copywriters, all that kind of stuff. All they are looking to do is just look at their priority list, get in, get out. But then you might have managers, like the project managers have to sit in the environment and update their projects, make sure they're moving forward, all of that kind of stuff. I alluded to the recycle bin. Love it. It's an important part of the process. People are going to delete things accidentally. We just can't stop that from happening. But we want to be able to know what is recyclable. So our main three objects, tasks, issues, projects are going to be your keys. And then other things you have to be careful about, like reports and custom fields and custom forms. Those things aren't resurrectable. So be careful with those. That's why I do encourage kind of putting your sandboxes on a cadence so that you don't accidentally lose any information. You can always go back to those, find them. Unfortunately, maybe you have to rebuild them, but they're not lost forever. So if you do like every 30 days and kind of overlap those sandboxes, you at least have some bit of coverage there. Leverage your group admins and super users. That's always great. Leverage your sandboxes for testing. If you feel like it, you could do a Workfront support queue additional questions to capture user experience, so they can tell you how they're feeling about it, what kind of changes, maybe they have ideas, those kind of things. And then at the end of the year, maybe you create a roadmap based upon those needs and say, hey, I want to add some of these features that people have been asking for, or maybe there's a product feature that is coming to Workfront that they've been asking for, and you can promote that and really get adoption and usability onto the top list of everything. And then the last thing, just like we've been talking about with automation, if you can get automation into your system, it's going to make some of these redundancies, some of these manual efforts a lot easier for you. You can run scenarios at a specific time. You can make them run one time in like 30 days or whatever you need to do. And so that could be useful to you too as well. And then make those as send reports to you in order to see those things. So that is everything there for maintenance. I know that was a lot of information. I've given us about 4 minutes. Certainly, if you have any questions, we're more than happy to ask. As a reminder, if you're thinking about anything as we were talking here that you would like to know more information about, or something we didn't talk about that you're interested in, again, this can be a resource for you all to ask us questions, and we can give you our feedback and our kind of tap into our knowledge base and sort of give you some insight into like what we may have done, or maybe considerations in terms of like solving problems. And feel free to use the chat. I'm not sure if we have the open mics right now. If we don't, I'm sorry, but definitely put in a question in chat if you would like to. If not, you're more than welcome to leave a couple minutes early, and we'll get this recording posted as soon as we can. I know I missed the recording. I did the whole slide about this is being recorded and missed to hit the record button. So we'll see if we can backfill that first part of the Fusion that Kurt was mentioning about why Fusion.
Yeah, well, a couple of days we'll get the slides out to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Any other
Thanks,
questions?
everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. Oh, unrecord.